In the darkest depths where light dares not tread, a fragile balance holds the fate of worlds. Sealed away for eons, the ancient locks that guard the apocalypse remain unbroken until now. A forbidden seal shattered, and from the abyss, a fallen angel rises, cloaked in shadows and vengeance. The heavens tremble, and the earth's heartbeat falters. Across the veiled realms, a secret brotherhood of righteous souls awakens, bound by sacred oath and unyielding courage. Their journey will lead them beyond mortal bounds, into the fiery chasms of the underworld, where forgotten powers stir and time itself unravels. This is the tale of the lost seals, of angelic rebellion and human resolve, a battle where hope flickers like a dying ember, yet may blaze into eternal light. The struggle to restore balance begins here, in the abyssal depths, where only the brave dare to follow. Welcome to the Angel of the Abyss, the secret of the lost seals. Chapter 1. The shattering of the first seal. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the ancient city of Elysium. Stone spires reached skyward, crowned with statues of angels whose watchful eyes seemed to pierce the gathering dusk. For centuries, the city thrived in peace, guarded by the celestial covenant that had sealed away the darkest of secrets. Yet tonight, the air hummed with an uneasy stillness, as if the world itself held its breath. Far beyond the mortal realm, in a prison forged by divine hands, the abyss pulsed with restless fury. It was a place where time twisted and shadows roamed free, a void that devoured light and hope alike. Locked within this eternal darkness was an angel, once a guardian of heavenly law, now a rebel cast down for defying the sacred order. His name was Azrael, the Fallen Flame. Banished to the abyss for crimes unknown to men, he had waited in silence, nursing his wrath and plotting escape. The seals, ancient relics of unimaginable power, held him captive, their glowing runes inscribed by archangels in a time before time. 7 in total, these seals ensured that the chaos locked within would never touch the earth. But one had broken. It was not an accident. A ripple of energy tore through the fabric of reality, and with it, the first seal shattered like glass beneath an invisible hand. From the crack, a chill wind spilled forth, carrying whispers of doom to every corner of existence. The balance teetered on the edge of collapse. At the heart of Elysium, in a hidden chamber beneath the grand cathedral, a secret brotherhood gathered. Cloaked figures moved with silent purpose, their faces etched with determination and fear. They were the custodians, keepers of the ancient knowledge, and sworn defenders against the darkness that sought to consume the world. Elder Malachi, their leader, stepped forward. His eyes, sharp and knowing, reflected the flicker of torchlight as he held aloft a fragment of the shattered seal, a shard still glowing with eerie blue fire. "The seal is broken," Malachi spoke, his voice steady yet heavy. "The fallen flame has begun his escape. If we do not act swiftly, the world will burn." A young warrior named Leora clenched her fists, the weight of destiny settling over her shoulders. "What must we do?" Malachi's gaze hardened. "We must descend into the abyss itself. To restore the seals, we must face Azrael and the horrors he commands. Our journey will be perilous. Few return from the depths. But it is our duty, or all will be lost." Outside, the city's bells tolled midnight, echoing like a dirge through the silent streets. The battle for the fate of the world had begun. Leora swallowed the rising fear and met Malachi's gaze. "Then we leave at dawn. For the light to survive, the shadows must be faced." As the night deepened, unseen eyes watched from the darkness, and the first whispers of the apocalypse stirred on the wind. The seals were lost, but the fight was just beginning. Chapter 2. Descent into Shadows. Dawn broke over Elysium with a fragile light, casting pale hues across the ancient stone and stained glass windows of the cathedral. The city stirred, unaware of the storm gathering just beyond the veil of mortal sight. In the bowels beneath the grand edifice, The custodians readied themselves for the descent. Leora stood at the center of the circle, the fragment of the shattered seal glowing faintly in her palm. Around her, the Brotherhood moved with purpose, each bearing weapons forged in celestial fire and relics imbued with forgotten power. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of what lay ahead pressing down like the dark waters of the abyss itself. Elder Malachi stepped forward, his voice low but unwavering. The path to the abyss lies beneath us, through the crypts where the world's dead rest. We must pass through shadows that twist the mind, illusions that prey on fear. Only the pure of heart can endure. Leora swallowed hard, the gravity of their mission settling deep in her bones. How do we know the way? The abyss is no place mapped by man or angel. A younger custodian, Jareth, unrolled an ancient scroll etched with arcane symbols. This map was given to us by the Seer of Veritas before the seals began to fall. It guides us through the labyrinth of lost souls to the gates of the abyss. The group descended a narrow, spiral staircase, the torchlight flickering as cold stone walls closed in around them. Whispers floated on the stale air, ghostly echoes of those long gone. Leora felt a chill creeping along her spine, but she forced her steps onward. As they reached the crypt, the air thickened with a strange energy, heavy and oppressive. Shadows writhed at the edges of vision, twisting into faces of agony and despair. Some of the custodians faltered, their resolve tested by phantom horrors that clawed at their memories. "Hold fast," Malachi commanded, raising his staff. A beam of radiant light burst forth, pushing back the shadows. The abyss seeks to break us before we reach it. Further in, the labyrinth twisted impossibly, staircases folding into themselves, corridors disappearing into walls of smoke. Time lost meaning. Leora's heart pounded, but she recalled the elder's words. Only the pure of heart could endure. She steadied her breath, focusing on the seal shard's faint glow. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. From the darkness ahead emerged a creature born of nightmare, a twisted form of flame and ash, eyes burning like coals. It was a guardian of the abyss, sentinels left behind to bar the way. Steel clashed with shadow as the custodians fought fiercely. Leora wielded her sword with practiced grace, the blade singing with celestial fire as it cut through the dark beast. The creature's screeches echoed through the crypt, but with a final strike, it dissolved into smoke and embers. Breathing heavily, the group pressed onward, their path now open. The gates of the abyss awaited, a yawning maw of swirling darkness, with a fallen flame stirred, and the fate of the world hung in the balance. Leora's eyes met Malachi's once more. "There is no turning back." He nodded solemnly. "Only forward, into the shadows where light must be reclaimed." Chapter 3. The Gates of the Abyss. The gates loomed before them, monolithic arches carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the surrounding light. Swirling shadows twisted within the cavernous portal, a shifting curtain between worlds. The air was thick with a palpable dread, a silence so deep it seemed to press against the very souls of those who dared approach. Leora stepped forward, the fragment of the broken seal pulsing faintly in her hand. Its eerie blue glow cast flickering patterns on the rough stone floor. She felt the weight of countless eyes watching from the darkness beyond, and yet there was no turning back. Elder Malachi moved beside her, his voice barely more than a whisper. "This is the boundary. Beyond here lies the abyss, where Azrael waits, and the fate of all rests upon our courage." The custodians formed a tight circle, their combined light pushing back the oppressive shadows. Each of them held relics and weapons charged with ancient power, but the unease was undeniable. They were stepping into a realm where mortal laws no longer applied. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the darkness, deep and resonant. "Who dares breach the prison of the fallen flame?" From the swirling shadows, a figure emerged, a colossal guardian forged of stone and flame, its eyes burning with an unholy fire. The sentinel of the abyss, an ancient protector bound to ensure none entered without paying the price. Malachi raised his staff. We come as a last hope. The seals have been broken, the balance shattered. We seek to restore what was lost. The guardian's gaze bore into them, searching for deceit or weakness. Then, with a roar that shook the cavern, it charged. Steel met stone as the custodians sprang into battle. Leora's blade clashed against the sentinel's fiery fists, sparks flying in a deadly dance. The fight was brutal, each strike echoing like thunder, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. The shard of the seal pulsed stronger in Leora's hand, and suddenly she understood. The power within it was the key, not brute force, but unity of purpose. She raised the fragment high, calling upon the light it contained. A brilliant beam shot forth, striking the sentinel's chest. The ancient guardian faltered, its fiery glow dimming as it shrank back into the shadows. With a final shudder, the gates began to part. The way forward lay open, but as they stepped through, the air grew colder, the darkness thicker. Whispers filled their ears, voices of despair and rage, memories of those who had fallen to the abyss's depths. Leora tightened her grip on the shard. We face more than monsters. We face the darkness within ourselves. Malachi nodded gravely, and only through that inner light can we hope to prevail. Beyond the gates, the abyss stretched endlessly, a vast chasm of shadows and fire, where the fallen flame waited and the fate of the world would be decided. Chapter 4. The River of Forgotten Names. The custodians stepped beyond the gate, swallowed by a darkness that was not merely the absence of light, but the memory of light extinguished. The abyss stretched before them like an ancient wound in the fabric of creation. The very air tasted of rusted iron and sorrow, and their breath came slow, burdened by a gravity deeper than stone. Beneath their feet, the ground shifted. It was not earth nor stone, but something older, something alive. A trembling pulse echoed through it, like the dying heartbeat of a forgotten god. Veins of red light throbbed faintly beneath the surface, illuminating the path that led to the edge of a great river. It flowed soundlessly, a current of liquid shadow, streaked with glimmers of violet and ghostly blue. The River of Forgotten Names. Its surface did not reflect the travelers, but the faces of those who had perished in obscurity, abandoned warriors, forsaken children, traitors, martyrs, and angels who had fallen without songs to remember them. Malachi's voice was low. This river drinks what the world forgets. Names stripped from tombstones. Memories stolen by time. It remembers what no one else dares to. Leora approached the bank, staring into the depths. For a heartbeat, she saw herself, not as she was, but as she might become, alone, eyes hollow, wings torn, her voice a whisper lost on the wind. She stumbled back, the shard pulse cold in her hand. Elia, the youngest of the custodians, paused nearby, her gaze locked on a figure rising from the water. It was her brother, dead these 10 years. His face was serene. "Come home, Elia. You're tired. Let it end." "Elia, no," Jared shouted, but she stepped forward, eyes brimming. Leora grabbed her just in time. The image shattered, turning to smoke and weeping. Elia collapsed, clutching her chest, weeping. It felt real. Malachi knelt beside her. The river tempts with comfort. That is how it consumes. They pressed on, the river ever at their side, whispering secrets as they walked. Hidden sins, doubts never spoken aloud, fears that should not have names. Each custodian was forced to walk through their own darkness, to deny it power. Ahead, the river narrowed, its black sheen reflecting a bridge formed of bones, some bleached and brittle, others freshly marked with the blood of those who dared cross. It swayed over the chasm, seemingly suspended by will alone. "There is no turning back," Malachi said. One by one they crossed, their steps tentative. Beneath them, the river churned with invisible rage. Midway across, the winds rose. Howls echoed from the depths, voices speaking in tongues not heard since Eden. The bridge shuddered. Leora nearly slipped, but Jarrett's hand caught her wrist. Hold on. The truth is not found in the water. It's in us. When they reached the other side, the path descended into a ravine of black glass and whispering stone. The shard in Leora's hand flared, its glow stronger now, as if it had tasted the threshold of the fallen flame. Before stepping onward, she turned back once more. The river still flowed in silence, the forgotten watching with hollow eyes. "I will not forget you," she whispered. And then they vanished into the deeper dark, where names had no meaning and only purpose remained. Chapter 5. The Cathedral of Hollow Thrones. The path beyond the river narrowed into a corridor of jagged obsidian. The walls shimmered with faint images, shadows of ancient kings and fallen saints, their eyes hollow, their crowns melting into smoke. The custodians advanced in silence, each step echoing like thunder in the brittle stillness. A sudden gust blew out the light of Malachi's staff. Only the shard in Leora's hand remained, flickering like a wounded star. Ahead, a vast chamber opened, wide as a battlefield and high as the heavens. Its ceiling was lost in shadow, but its walls were lined with massive thrones, 24 in all, each carved from a different element: flame, ice, crystal, ash, bone, and void. None were occupied. "This is the Cathedral of Hollow Thrones," whispered Malachi. "The place where watchers once ruled before the seals were written." Statues stood before each throne, warriors, sages, angels in robes of stone. Some wept. Others raised swords skyward in defiance. Yet all bore the same mark, a broken seal carved into their chests. Leora felt the weight of time pressing on her shoulders. This place was older than language, older, perhaps, than judgment itself. As they walked between the thrones, the air changed. It grew cold, then warm, then tasted of ash. The shard pulsed violently, and Leora gasped as a vision consumed her. She stood alone in the cathedral, yet it was whole and shining. The thrones were filled, and a great voice boomed from the center. "The seventh has fallen. The seals tremble. Who shall descend and make the breach whole?" Leora raised her hand, but the vision shattered like glass. She was on her knees, her heart racing. Jareth helped her up. "What did you see?" "Not what, but when," she said, her voice trembling. "A moment that hasn't come, or one that always was." From the center of the cathedral, a figure emerged, hooded and tall, robed in layers of dust and golden thread. Its face was hidden, but its voice rang like distant bells. "You trespass in the court of those who swore to guard the seals. Why have you come?" Malachi stepped forward. "One has been broken. The balance is torn. We seek the shards of the binding flame." The figure did not move. "You walk in a shadow to find light. But the flame you seek burns within you, or not at all." Leora lifted the shard. "Then guide us, or condemn us. But do not delay." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of stone grinding against stone. The thrones trembled. The statues wept tears of molten gold. Then the figure turned and beckoned. They followed it into a smaller chamber behind the cathedral, where a pedestal waited. Upon it lay an orb, encased in frost and thorns. It pulsed with crimson light. "This is the echo of dominion," the guide said. "It will reveal the location of the next shard, but only if your intentions are pure." Elia stepped forward and placed her hand on the orb. She screamed. Visions of war, betrayal, and fire tore through her. Her knees buckled, but she held on. Then silence. The orb dimmed. A map formed on the wall, written in flame. "The shard of the ninth flame rests beneath the tomb of winds," the figure declared. Before they could ask more, the cathedral groaned. Cracks formed in the thrones. A howl rose from the stone itself. The guardian faded into dust, whispering, "They are waking." The thrones remember. The custodians fled the collapsing chamber, the map burning into Leora's memory. Behind them, the hollow throne shattered, releasing something ancient and hungry. Their journey was no longer secret. The abyss had taken notice, and it would not sleep again. Chapter 6. The Tomb of Winds. The air grew thin as the custodians ascended a spiral stair of shattered bones, each step groaning beneath their weight. The shard in Leora's hand pulsed brighter now, drawn forward by unseen currents. The tunnel ahead opened into a vast cavern where the wind screamed, not from any sky or storm, but from within the stone itself. This was the Tomb of Winds. The walls were ribbed with hollow channels that howled ceaselessly. Carvings spiraled along every surface, winged figures etched in anguish, their mouths open in eternal cries. Giant statues, broken and faceless, leaned against the wind's fury. Every gust carried whispers, memories trapped in air, names spoken once, then forgotten. Malachi reached for his scrolls. This place was once the resting ground of the Windborn, angels who defied the fall but refused the ascent. They're neither above nor below, just lost. No tomb is empty in the abyss, Jareth muttered, eyes scanning the shadows. At the heart of the cavern stood a towering monolith of obsidian and skyglass, twisted as if frozen midstorm. It emitted a constant hum, like a distant horn. The shard in Leora's hand tugged toward it. Symbols danced across the monolith's surface, glowing faintly with silver light. Leora approached, her fingers outstretched. It's calling the flame. Before she could touch it, the ground shuddered. Cracks webbed across the floor, and from the fissures rose figures, tall, emaciated beings with translucent wings torn and hanging. Their faces were veiled in mist, but their eyes, glowing with azure fire, pierced the soul. They were angels, Elio whispered, backing away. Once. Now they were wraithborn, trapped between obedience and rebellion, neither dead nor divine. They moved with grace and agony, circling the custodians like vultures of memory. One spoke, its voice a wind through dry leaves. Why disturb our silence? Why seek what was buried by will divine? Malachi stepped forward. Because silence has failed. One of the seals has been broken. We seek to mend what is unraveling. The wraiths hissed. The flame cannot be reclaimed. Its keeper is bound, its prison sealed by breath and blade. But you remember where it lies, Leora said. A pause. Then, the lead wraith lifted a hand and gestured toward the monolith. Then prove your worth in wind and word. A spiral of wind descended, forming a vortex around the custodians. Inside it, the air thickened, heavy with memory. Each was plunged into a vision, moments of guilt, regret, and pain. Jareth saw himself standing over the body of fallen comrade, blade-stained, eyes full of rage. Elia relived the fire that took her family, her screams lost to smoke. Malachi wandered a library of burning books, unable to save even a page. And Leora stood before the angel of the abyss, her hand outstretched as she whispered the command to shatter the seal. She screamed. The wind stopped. The custodians dropped to their knees, gasping. The wraiths watched silently. You have endured, the leader said. But endurance is not redemption. The shard lies beneath the monolith. You must descend. With a wave, the floor split open, revealing a staircase of wind itself. Each step translucent, shifting, never the same twice. Leora led the way, the shard in her hand blazing now like a second sun. The descent was treacherous. Each step tested memory, forcing them to recall moments best forgotten. But at the end, they emerged into a chamber made of living air and stone. And there, embedded in a pillar of wind, hovered the second shard, golden, burning, alive. Leora reached for it. It did not resist. The moment she touched it, the chamber quaked. The wind roared in triumph or terror. The wraithborn above screamed in unison. The second shard had been claimed, but in taking it, they had stirred what waited in the deepest winds, something old, something furious. They turned to ascend, knowing that above, the abyss now howled their names. Chapter 7. The Herald of Cinders. When they emerged from the Tomb of Winds, the world above had changed. The cavern behind them sealed with a gust like the last breath of a dying god, and silence clung to the earth. The shard pulsed hot in Leora's grasp, hotter than before, like a heart too long restrained, now awakened in fury. They followed a scar across the ground, a trail of blackened grass and splintered stone that stretched toward the horizon. It hadn't been there before. El fuego y camina sobre la tierra, murmured Elia in a tongue half-ancient. Malachi nodded grimly. The seal's rupture is feeding the forgotten. Something has risen. As night fell, they reached the edge of a once-forgotten forest, now nothing but charcoal bones. The trees stood black and brittle, their branches etched with unnatural symbols that glowed faintly. At the center, an altar burned with a cold blue flame, unnatural and scentless. Around it, scorched bodies lay in patterns of prayer, their faces melted into masks of rapture. A soft wind carried ashes, and with it came a voice, low, resonant, terrible. You bring light into ash. You carry the blood memory of flame. You are not unseen. From the darkness emerged a figure cloaked in embers, its body half smoke, half charcoal steel. It wore no face, only a crown of burnt gold and eyes like coals buried deep in snow. In its hands, it held a blade that bled fire backward, consuming heat rather than giving it. I am the herald of cinders, it declared, sworn to the keeper of the third shard. You shall not pass. Jared stepped forward, sword drawn. We faced worse than smoke and shadow. The herald raised its blade. Then you have not yet faced truth. With a cry, it charged, trailing ash and ruin behind it. Steel met flame in a clash that shook the clearing. Jareth parried, but his blade hissed as fire bit into it. Elia loosed arrows that turned to vapor midair. Malachi chanted runes, circles of light forming barriers that cracked under the herald's fury. Leora stood still, her shard blazing, her breath shallow. The shard called not to the herald, but through it. She felt something behind the flames, sorrow, regret, binding. I know you, she whispered, stepping forward. The herald paused, its sword inches from Jareth's throat. You were once an angel, she said, raising the shard. You were bound to the third seal. You burned when the command was given. The herald trembled. I chose the flame. I embraced the ash. I forgot why. Then remember, she said. The shard flared. The fire around the herald faltered. Its form flickered, revealing a face beneath the ash. A man's face, marked with tears that turned to smoke. Wings, once radiant, folded in shame. You seek the shard, he said, voice breaking. We seek to restore the balance, Leora answered, or everything will burn. The herald raised his blade once more, but not to strike. Instead, he plunged it into the ground. A shock wave rippled out, extinguishing the blue flame of the altar. Then go, he said, through the pyre gate. The shard awaits, deep in the furnace of the lost. But know this, each flame you awaken also awakens what sleeps beneath the ash. With that, his form disintegrated, leaving only a feather of black flame drifting downward. Leora caught it in silence. A stone path appeared beyond the altar, leading into a canyon that glowed red from within. The pyre gate awaited. They walked in silence, the third shard now pulsing in rhythm with the others. But behind them, among the ashes, something opened an unseen eye and watched. Chapter 8. The Furnace of the Lost. The pyre gate rose before them like the ribcage of a fallen titan, its arch formed from molten stone that pulsed with veins of crimson fire. As they passed beneath it, the air thickened, not with heat, but with memory. Echoes of screams long extinguished danced on invisible currents. The canyon beyond spiraled downward, carved not by nature, but by sorrow. This was the furnace of the lost. They descended carefully, torches hissing though no wind blew. The walls bled heat, and on them, blackened handprints marked the stone, remnants of those who had tried to escape. Statues lined the descent, twisted figures once angelic, now half-melted, half-turned to slag. Some wept tears of obsidian. Others bore expressions of silent ecstasy. Jareth spoke low, his voice raw. These were once guardians of flame. Bound here for sins even the heavens could not forgive. El fuego fue su castigo, why su redemption? Elia added, tracing a rune with her fingers across a pillar. They chose to burn rather than bow. At the canyon's heart, they found a crucible suspended by chains over a lake of fire. The third shard floated within it, encased in glass like molten crystal. But before they could reach it, the lake stirred. From its depths rose a creature born of ember and agony. It had no eyes, only a face of scorched iron and wings like forge hammers. Its voice was not spoken, but screamed directly into the soul. Who dares to seek the third shard? Malachi raised his staff, shielding the others. We are the custodians of the seals. We seek restoration. There is no restoration, roared the being, only purification. It struck. A column of fire surged upward, engulfing the crucible. The heat bent the air. The chain snapped. The shard began to fall toward the lava below. Leora leapt, shard in hand, forming a bridge of light beneath her. Jareth threw his blade, embedding it into the wall to anchor her. Malachi chanted desperately, forming a shield to hold back the flames, while Elia fired a blessed arrow into the creature's heart. The beast howled and split open, revealing within it the face of a child, burned, crying, forgotten. It spoke. We waited, but no one came. Leora caught the shard midair. Its touch seared her palm, branding her with its sigil. The moment it left the crucible, the fire stilled. The creature crumbled to ash, and the lake dimmed to embers. A path rose from the cooling stone, leading upward. As they climbed, the cavern walls lit with images, visions of angels descending with chains, sealing something far below. A voice whispered from the cracks. 3 seals broken. 4 remain, but the eye begins to open. When they reached the surface, the furnace behind them collapsed, swallowed by its own silence. The custodians stood in the shadow of the third shard's power. They were now marked, not just by light but by fire. And in the distance, clouds gathered unnaturally, swirling around a mountain that hadn't been there before. Leora turned toward it, her eyes burning with purpose. The next shard waits at the summit of the forgotten sky. And with that, they marched onward, toward the storm. Chapter 9. The Summit of the Forgotten Sky. The mountain had no name. It was not drawn on any map, spoken of in no tongue known to mortals. It rose above the clouds like a blade of judgment, piercing the heavens. Lightning circled its peak in unnatural silence, and thunder cracked without sound, only vibration. The fourth shard waited there, encased in storm and memory. The custodians began their ascent beneath a sky bruised with violet hues. The air grew thin, each breath like drawing cold iron into the lungs. Snow did not fall. It rose in reverse, drawn upward into the tempest like lost souls seeking escape. Jareth clenched his cloak tighter. This place wasn't meant for flesh. No, Malachi agreed, eyes narrowed. This mountain was carved for spirits, for battles written in the breath of eternity. The climb grew steeper. The path vanished often, replaced by ledges slick with frost and bridges of glass that rang with hymns when stepped upon. Time warped. Night and day swirled together in chaotic twilight. Each moment stretched, then collapsed, like the mountain resisted being known. At one point, they passed a frozen tree with golden leaves, each leaf containing a tiny, screaming face. Leora paused, touching its bark. They were watchers, she murmured, bound here for desiring the light too much. The tree pulsed. A whisper emerged. If you ascend, you must be willing to fall. Higher still they climbed, until they reached the base of the summit, a plateau wrapped in wind and silence. In the center stood a monolith carved from stormstone. Suspended above, it was the fourth shard, encased in a spinning sphere of lightning. Around the monolith knelt 6 figures in eternal prayer. Cloaked in white, their faces hidden beneath veils of frost, they hummed in unison. Their voices held the sky together. "They're the 6 winds," Elia said reverently. "Each holds a direction. Each binds the storm. As they stepped closer, the winds faltered. The figures trembled. The sky darkened. And from the eye of the storm descended a figure borne on wings of storm cloud and starlight, clad in robes of night. With a crown of icicles atop silver hair, it hovered without effort. Its face was neither young nor old, timeless and terrifying. "I am Zephyr, the being declared, warden of the northern vault. The fourth seal is not yours to claim." "We do not claim it," Leora answered. "We return what has been shattered." Zephyrel's eyes narrowed. "Restoration is a lie. Each seal broken calls not balance, but unraveling." Then the winds howled, the 6 kneeling figures rising. Their bodies cracked as they transformed into winged giants, their mouths opening in silent song. Together, they formed a ring around the custodians, the air vibrating with celestial resonance. Malachi planted his staff. "Hold the circle." Elia fired an arrow into the storm, only for it to be swallowed by the sky. Jareth charged Zephyr, blade raised. Lightning struck, deflecting his steel. He fell to one knee, smoke curling from his shoulders. Leora raised the 3 shards. They spun in her hands, weaving threads of fire, wind, and silence. A pattern emerged, ancient and living. Zephyr halted. "You bear the triad of flame," he whispered. "The fire, the ash, the breath. You should not." But the pattern ignited. A pulse burst outward, knocking the 6 winds to their knees. Zephyr staggered as the 4th shard shattered its prison and flew into Leora's grasp, its light now harmonized with the others. The storm collapsed. The sky cleared. The summit turned warm. Zephyr knelt. "Then it has begun. The locks fall not by choice, but by decree." "What decree?" Leora asked, but the angel only raised his gaze toward the heavens. "You will see." The custodians descended the mountain in silence. The 4th shard nestled among the others, glowing with the voice of wind and time. Far below, the earth groaned. Something old was waking. Chapter 10. The Choir Beneath the Sand. The desert stretched like a golden sea, endless and silent, its dunes sculpted by winds that no longer blew. At its heart lay the forgotten ruin of Sepharel, a city swallowed by sand, erased from every chronicle but one, a fragment of parchment carried by Malachi, written in a script older than stars. "The 5th shard lies below," he said, voice hushed, "in a sanctuary where angels once sang before the fall." As they entered the dunes, the sun dimmed unnaturally, casting the sky in hues of blood orange and ash. Each step sank deep, as if the earth hungered for them. Whispers rode the heat, snatches of hymns, sung in minor keys. "There are no birds," Jareth noted. "No life," Elia added. "Not even shadows." Suddenly, the sand gave way beneath their feet. The world flipped, and they fell, not into death, but into stillness. They landed in a vast underground chamber, its walls etched with glowing runes. Pillars of quartz rose like frozen thunder, and above them, suspended in the ceiling, hung massive bells of gold and bone. "The choir hall," Malachi whispered. Each bell once rang with the breath of a seraph. A soft, rhythmic hum began, as if the walls remembered the melody. And then, from the center of the chamber, rose a dais. On it, the 5th shard floated, encased in crystal that shimmered like moonlight over water. But before they could approach, the bells began to toll, one by one, low, terrible, echoing with sorrow. From the shadows stepped figures draped in dusty choir robes, faces hidden behind masks of alabaster and thorns. Their hands were long and graceful, but twisted. Where hearts should have beat, gaping holes sang. "They are the silent cantors," Malachi said, "bound by a vow never to cease their praise or their grief." The cantors opened their mouths, not in song, but in scream. Sound became weapon. Notes fractured the air. Pillars cracked. The runes flared with pain. Jareth dashed forward, shield raised. Elia loosed a volley of silver-tipped arrows that turned into flutes midair, piercing the sound. Leora stepped onto the dais, the other 4 shards orbiting her. But the cantors closed in. Malachi dropped to his knees, pressing his palm against the floor. "I must unbind the original song," he cried. "Cover me." He began to chant, voice rough, blending language and light. A cantor lunged, only to be cleaved by Jareth's blade. Another screamed, and Eliah's ear bled, but her arrow found its throat. The air pulsed harder, as if the very room resisted change. Then, from the earth below the dais, a great bell emerged, black as night, etched with the names of fallen angels. Malachi's chant reached its crescendo. The bell tolled. Once, the cantors froze mid-motion. Their masks cracked. They began to cry, and their voices turned from scream to lament, then to silence. They bowed and vanished into dust. The crystal shattered. The fifth shard dropped gently into Leora's hand. The chamber trembled. Above, the sand roared. The custodians fled up a staircase newly revealed, stone steps spiraling through layers of time. As they emerged back into the desert light, the ruins of Sepharel collapsed behind them, swallowed once more by eternity. Leora turned to Malachi. "What was that bell?" "The bell of names," he replied, wiping blood from his brow. "It remembers all who ever sang in defiance or praise. And today, it remembered mercy. Overhead, clouds gathered, no longer of water, but of wings. Dozens, hundreds, angels stirred in the unseen heights, awakened by the sound. The fifth seal was restored, and the heavens had heard it." Chapter 11. The Whispering Abyss. The air grew colder as the custodians approached the edge of the world, the place where the sky kissed the endless void. Beyond this border lay the abyss, a yawning chasm of shadow and silence, whispered about in legends as the prison of forgotten angels and lost souls. The sixth shard was said to lie within, guarded by horrors no mortal mind should contemplate. Jareth gripped his sword tighter, his breath misting in the frigid air. "The silence here, it's alive." Elia nodded, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond. "It listens. It waits." They stepped onto a narrow bridge of obsidian, suspended over nothing but an infinite drop. The bridge seemed to pulse beneath their feet, shadows curling like serpents around their ankles. Malachi raised his staff, chanting softly to hold the darkness at bay. The shards around Leora glowed faintly, casting trembling light. Suddenly, from the blackness emerged whispers, soft, seductive, full of promises and despair. Voices of those lost, begging, pleading, tempting. "Come," they breathed. "Join us in the eternal sleep." Elia faltered, clutching her ears. "Don't listen. They feed on doubt." As they crossed, shadowy forms coalesced, twisted shapes with broken wings and hollow eyes, remnants of angels fallen to despair. The custodians formed a circle, chanting protective incantations. Jareth's blade cut through shadow tendrils, Eliah's arrows struck true, and Malachi's light pushed back the darkness inch by inch. But the whispers grew louder, more desperate. At the bridge's end, a colossal gate loomed, wrought from bone and iron, inscribed with forbidden runes. The sixth shard hovered within its center, locked behind a barrier of crackling shadow. Leora stepped forward, raising the shards. They pulsed in harmony, weaving threads of light that began to unravel the shadow barrier. Then came the voice, deep, resonant, unyielding. "I am Azrael, the keeper of lost hope." A figure materialized, cloaked in swirling mist, wielding a scythe forged from starlight and sorrow. His eyes glowed with the weight of eternity. "You seek what you cannot have," he intoned. "Hope is a fragile thing, broken long ago." Leora met his gaze. "Hope is the light we carry through darkness. Without it, all falls to ruin." Azrael raised his scythe. "Then prove it." The final battle began, light against shadow, hope against despair. The custodians fought not just for shards, but for the soul of the world itself. Chapter 12. The Veil of Eternal Night. The battle with Azrael's shadowy legion had drained their strength, yet the custodians pressed forward. Beyond the gate lay the realm known as the Veil of Eternal Night, a place where light was swallowed and time ceased to exist. It was here the seventh shard awaited, hidden within the heart of the abyssal labyrinth. The air was thick with cold and silence, broken only by distant echoes of forgotten cries. Every step felt like sinking deeper into a dream from which one might never awaken. The walls around them pulsed with a blackened glow, alive with restless shadows. Leora led the way, shards in hand, their faint glow the only beacon against the oppressive darkness. Each corridor twisted and turned, impossible to map, as if the labyrinth shifted with their every move. The whispers of lost souls tugged at their resolve, promising escape if only they surrendered. Suddenly, the labyrinth opened into a vast cavern. In its center floated the seventh shard, suspended above a pit of swirling void. Around it danced ghostly figures, the keepers of the veil, angels who had surrendered to despair, now bound as wraiths guarding the precious relic. Their voices, like broken glass, shattered the stillness. Turn back, or be lost forever. Jareth raised his sword, its blade igniting with the fire of the first shard. We do not turn. Not now. Not ever. The wraiths attacked, their forms flickering between light and shadow. Eliah's arrows sang through the air, striking the ethereal foes with piercing clarity. Malachi's incantations wove protective shields as Leora advanced, the shards radiating power that burned the darkness. The battle was fierce, testing every ounce of their strength and will. But as the last wraith dissolved into mist, Leora reached for the seventh shard. As her fingers closed around it, the cavern trembled, the void's swirling fury quieted, and a beam of pure light burst forth, piercing the veil itself. The labyrinth began to collapse, corridors folding into themselves like a dying star folding space. The custodians fled, racing against time as the abyss tried to claim them. When they finally emerged, the dawn was breaking. The sky bled with crimson and gold. The world itself seemed to breathe anew. The seven shards now united, their light singing in harmony. But the final trials still awaited. Chapter 13. The Heart of the Inferno. The air grew thick with heat, a blistering embrace that burned flesh and spirit alike. Before them sprawled the great chasm known as the Heart of the Inferno, an endless pit of molten fire and brimstone, the domain where the eighth shard lay hidden, forged in the fires of creation and destruction alike. The ground cracked beneath their feet as rivers of lava snaked like living serpents. Shadows danced with flames, casting twisted shapes on the jagged cliffs. The sky was a roiling tempest of smoke and ash, as if the world itself was on the verge of collapse. Jareth wiped sweat from his brow, the weight of his sword now heavier with the burden of what lay ahead. "This place is a crucible," he said. "Only the strongest survive." Elia scanned the horizon, eyes sharp against the flickering light. "And only the clever escape." Malachi stepped forward, chanting softly, weaving a shield of cool air around them. The shard is guarded by the fire serpent, a creature born from the first flame and sworn to protect the balance. As they advanced, the ground trembled. From a molten river rose a colossal serpent, scales shimmering like burning coals, eyes blazing with ancient fury. Its hiss echoed through the canyon, a sound that seared the soul. Leora held the shards close, their combined light forming a barrier against the inferno. "We seek only to restore, not to conquer." The serpent lunged, its fiery breath scorching the air. The custodians dodged and countered, their movements a dance between flame and shadow. Jareth's blade struck true, searing the serpent's scales, while Eliah's arrows found gaps between the fiery armor. Malachi's spells dulled the flames, turning heat to ash, and Leora's light pierced the darkness, weakening the beast's resolve. With a final, earth-shattering roar, the serpent fell into the molten depths, its body dissolving into the very fire it had commanded. From the ashes rose the eighth shard, glowing with primal fire. Leora grasped it, feeling the pulse of creation itself. The inferno quieted. The world held its breath. Only 3 shards remained. Chapter 14. The Veins of the Earth. The journey led them beneath the surface, far below the reach of light, into a labyrinth of tunnels and caverns known as the Veins of the Earth. This was the domain of the 9th shard, hidden in the deepest core where molten rock met ancient crystal, guarded by forces older than memory itself. The air was thick with sulfur and damp stone, a breathless silence pressing on their souls. Every step echoed, the sound swallowed quickly by the vastness around them. Jagged stalactites hung like frozen daggers, dripping water that hissed when it touched the scorched floor. Leora's shards pulsed faintly, illuminating their path with a soft, otherworldly glow. Malachi's voice was low, steady, chanting protective words to shield them from the darkness that sought to suffocate hope. Suddenly, the ground shuddered, and a deep growl echoed through the tunnels. From the shadows emerged the Earth Warden, a colossal beast of rock and crystal, its eyes like molten cores, its breath a furnace gale. Jareth raised his sword, now warm from their previous battles, and faced the Guardian. "We seek passage, not war." The Earth Warden's roar was a challenge, a demand for proof of worthiness. It charged, shaking the cavern walls. Eliah's arrows glowed with silver fire, piercing the creature's rocky hide. Malachi summoned roots and vines, binding limbs of stone to slow the beast. Leora stepped forward, holding the shards aloft. Their combined light struck the Guardian's chest, revealing a hidden sigil, the key to its allegiance. The Earth Warden halted, recognizing the shard's power. It bowed its massive head and stepped aside, revealing the 9th shard nestled within a crystal pedestal, pulsing with the heartbeat of the planet. As Leora grasped the shard, the cavern began to glow, the veins of the earth alive with renewed vigor. The custodians knew their quest neared its end. Only 2 shards remained between them and the salvation of their world. Chapter 15. The Final Seal. The air was thick with anticipation as the custodians ascended to the pinnacle of the abyss, a place where the veil between worlds thinned and the final 2 shards awaited. The landscape was a chaotic blend of shadow and light, fire and ice, a realm born of creation's last breath. Leora held the 9 shards, their light pulsating like a heartbeat, each resonating with power and purpose. The final seal, the 10th shard, lay beyond a gate of celestial flame, guarded by the Seraph of Twilight, a being of immense power, neither wholly light nor dark. Jareth tightened his grip on his sword, its blade humming with the combined energy of the shards. "This is what we came for. The fate of the world depends on what we do next." The Seraph appeared in a blaze of light and shadow, wings spanning the horizon. Its voice was both a whisper and a roar. "Only those pure of heart and steadfast in purpose may claim the final shard." Leora stepped forward, her voice steady. "We seek to restore balance, to prevent the world's destruction. Our hearts bear the weight of hope." A test unlike any before unfolded. The Seraph's flames tested their courage, its shadows their resolve. Each custodian faced their deepest fears, their darkest doubts. But united, they stood firm. Finally, the Seraph bowed and parted the flames, revealing the 10th shard, a crystal pulsing with the light of dawn and the darkness of night entwined. Leora reached out, the shards merging in her hand as the final seal was broken, a brilliant cascade of light sweeping across the abyss. The earth trembled, the skies cleared, and the balance was restored. The angel of the abyss, the rebel who escaped too soon, was drawn back into the void, sealed once more by the power of the shards and the courage of the just. Their quest fulfilled, the custodians gazed at the horizon, hope rekindled, the world safe for a new dawn.